hear them, because they called it, and you saw that in that little card, they called each other Oopsie, sort of a nickname, and they were clearly devoted to each other. I mean, she may have terrorized all the kids.
and other people.
What?
And Tom Corcoran.
And Tom Corcoran, yeah, others, but they were devoted. But the other thing you see a bit, and especially I think, David, in your comments in the film, is that this relationship continued. That as we grew up, we would have deeper, different conversations with Mr. Rey. We'd go back again and again to that house, and if the sign was turned so that we could come in, we'd knock on the door and come in. And so he was a guide. As you said, Nick, you know, he inspired us. And he inspired us to be better teachers, and in the case of Nat, a better naturalist. You know, he was absolutely amazing. And she was pretty neat too. One thing they don't mention in the film, she was a potter and made a lot of pottery. And I have one piece that she made that was a wedding present. She was very creative, and I think you see that. And again, it comes out a little bit in the film, but maybe not as much as it could. And she was passionate about her garden. And again, in the film, they don't mention that, but they show the flowers. Absolutely passionate. She had a beautiful garden, which meant she had an ongoing fight with the children and the golfers. Wasn't it the second tee that was right by their house? And so she would sometimes run screaming out of the house because she thought people had gotten too close to her garden.
I'm struck by a couple of themes that I've learned about tonight. One is about curiosity and respect, something that we saw in the movie and something that you were aware of. And it's a contrast to the other theme we heard about, which is the fear and suspicion of the Reys when they first arrived at Waterville Valley. I'm wondering if when you became aware of curiosity and respect in your conversations with them, that it came up.
Well, for me, I was never aware of that. I was just a little bit too young. And he just was such a marvelous, energetic, curious person. I think that it's a small New Hampshire community, very traditional Yankees, and part of it was just a fear of other. But I know by 1960 or 62, he was adored, and Margaret was completely accepted. Chosen carefully those words.
You know, kind of all my life I'd heard the story about that, if you will, that bit of the Jewish pushback that they received. I'm sure many of you bristle a little bit when you heard that. You should. And as Penny Stearns, the other lady in the
cousin,
of course, it said, you know, maybe there was some anti-Semitism in New Hampshire. I mean, New Hampshire wasn't exactly an ethnic melting pot. I mean, really. And so maybe there was some of that. But also, and it would be a long story that would have to bring the food in here and talk about it for a real long time, that Waterville was kind of a unique place, as I think Sue said, that, well, what you don't realize is the residents were some of the most original residents of Waterville, and it wasn't, you didn't come to Waterville because you wanted to. You came to Waterville because you were invited. And nobody had been invited for a long time. And what happened is these families had their children had families, and they brought their husbands, and they had families, and they brought their friends, but that's how Waterville was populated. And they were fiercely protective of that. Even from an early age, I can remember everybody was talking about someday all this would go away. This valley would become a ski resort with many houses. And you had to be there to appreciate just how much the people were protective of their valley. It wasn't, I never bought into that anti-Semitic story too much myself. And these people were just being protective because these people were new, and maybe this was the first beginning of the change that we knew what was inevitable. But certainly, maybe it's somewhere in between. But certainly, they did such a wonderful job of introducing themselves that it was never really spoken of again.
Yeah, I was never aware of it, but then we were, we'd been living in a country where we were the strangers for so long when we came to Waterville, but I had no sense of it with the Reys. They did talk about their escape. They talked about the bicycles and leaving Paris and about the Nazis and about the fact that they would have been killed if they'd stayed, but they never said anything about Waterville that way. And Waterville, yes, the reason Penny, who's also in the film, is our cousin, is that the family's all intermarried, and it was a very close-knit community.
I'm trying not to say that.
Say what?
I was trying not to say that.
In fact, in a book that our great uncle Nat wrote, he talks about the fact that a group of young men and women went hiking and they got caught by a storm and they were gone for several days, and there were quite a few engagements that resulted from that. So it was close-knit. And actually my favorite Waterville story now, and we're starting a historical society, but we don't live in Waterville Valley anymore. We live a few miles out off the road into the valley on a farm that's surrounded by national forests. And so when I met with the people in the Historical Society group that was starting, they said, I said, well, we really were part of it, but we don't live here anymore because it got too crowded for us. And they said, well, we live here because the rest of the world got too crowded for us. So Waterville still is a haven. But Nick, you wanted to say something?
Just to help characterize how insular Waterville was, there's a story that my great-grandmother used to meet people coming in the stagecoach. And she's said to have said to several people, you should go back. You're not the kind of person who would enjoy Waterville. And then there was a writer who came and stayed for a couple of weeks at the inn, and the rumors were all around town he had a beer in his room.
We have time for one more question, okay?
Yeah.
If,
One more.
any more questions?
Any more questions?
Good time.
I think if not, I'm speaking for all three of us now, but it was such a privilege to know the Reys. They were inspirational. Mr. Rey was so good to children. As I said, he treated us all with respect. And I think that's one of the things, that, in addition to the curious, one of the things to take away from him especially, but from them, was the ingenuity, but also the respect, the sort of caring for people that was so important, and the way he helped us see the world. I mean, I love the chipmunks, and I still feed them, and I think of it every time.
Thank you.
Yeah.